Welcome to The Chat. Come behind the inbound scenes of some of the world's fastest growing companies. For the past 10 years as Chatmetrics, we've had an exclusive inside view of how these industry leaders are revolutionising inbound marketing and sales across diverse sectors. Each week, we bring you conversations with top minds in marketing and sales who share insider secrets and strategies for driving inbound success. Join us on The Chat, your front row seat to the future of inbound. Today on The Chat, we're joined by Harris Kenny, founder of OutboundSync. He's built everything from fractional sales teams to multi-million-dollar inbound engines. Harris has scaled a hardware company from $1.7 to $20 million, built a HubSpot Gold partner agency, and now runs a SaaS that keeps your CRM clean and your GTM stack humming. If you care about turning revenue systems into inbound machines, this is your episode. Welcome to The Chat.
How's it going, Terry? Good to speak with you.
Good to see you again, Harris.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's jump straight into it. You've worn every GTM hat, founder, AE marketer. What's your personal definition of a winning outbound strategy in 20?
Well, I think that there are probably a couple of things. When we see people winning, we work with a lot of companies now that are essentially scaling up and they've got some traction. And then when they use our product, it's because they want that data in their CRM. So I do think we have a pretty good vantage point about what's working and scaling in terms of approaches where you're generating leads for teams. And the first thing is point solutions. People are getting an edge by choosing specialty tools that do certain things really well. I think there was a period where the all-in-one was working, but deliverability and data quality and other challenges, I think that there's at least one, if not a series of point solutions that people are adopting to either land in the inbox or keep their social connections alive and automate some social activity or build better lists or whatever. So I think that's one thing. I think the next is omni-channel. So people aren't just relying on a single channel anymore. They're testing multiple channels and then connecting multiple channels. So if they get a positive reply to an email, they're calling them immediately. And we have partners who have even hired people to do that, to show, hey, look, we're going to treat a reply to an email as a signal, but it's not the end. It's the beginning of now, it's the end of the beginning. And we now have this process to try to convert that lead. And using every channel available to do that. And then having visibility across channels, knowing that they may come in through another way. They may come in inbound. They may come in through a chat. They may come in through some other way, but they had gotten an email or they had gotten a cold call. And so we want to be kind of cognizant of that. So those are probably the two things. And then third thing, I can't not say it, but it's just volume. People just who are winning a lot are just taking a lot of shots, and that's like a trope back to name the famous athlete. They've said something along the lines of, you got to take a lot of shots kind of thing. And so those are probably the three things right now that I'm seeing across our users, and especially just looking at what we're seeing with agencies. And each of our agencies are serving, anywhere from a couple to dozens of clients or more. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing right now.
And so you mentioned inbound. I asked the question specifically about outbound, but inbound, are you seeing anything specifically in inbound in terms of a winning strategy?
Well, so outbound and inbound are connected more than ever. I think that what's happening now is people are, to borrow a phrase, they're doing their own research. So they get a reply or they get a cold email and they go to the domain directly. Mm-hmm. They check it out and then they will forward it through Slack to someone on their team. And then that person will come inbound and engage with the chat or book a meeting or download a piece of content or something like that. And so we definitely are seeing inbound and outbound are converging a bit. Now that's a little bit of where we sit. Obviously we work with a lot of companies on HubSpot and Salesforce. And so they do have these integrated systems, but I think that companies need to be able to connect the dots there and see, hey, this is where this lead came from. This is the context. It's not just a random lead. It's actually someone who we built a list, engaged them. They got a very specific offer and they're expecting maybe a higher level of engagement from us because we're the one that started the conversation. And so we see that as a rule of thumb, for every 10 leads that one of our agencies are generating for their customers, there's often another 10 that are being influenced by outbound and converting in some other way or engaging in some other channel. So yeah, I definitely think there's a convergence happening between outbound and inbound, and it makes that attribution conversation a lot more complicated, and it raises the stakes for engaging with those inbound leads because that cost of that lead is actually a lot higher than just clicking a single Google ad.
Absolutely. You talk about a convergence where we're seeing, I mentioned before that we've launched a new offer really for websites with under 1,000 visitors. Well, it's probably more aimed at websites and businesses that are only doing outbound. Because what we're finding is that when you're doing outbound, exactly what you said, you've piqued their interest. You're only going to be outbounding to your ICP. You've piqued their interest. They come to the domain of the website. If there's chat there, they're engaging with the chat. We're finding the conversion rates through chat on those websites with less traffic is that is purely an outbound play organisation is phenomenally higher than your traditional, 1 to 2, 3%, depending on the quality of the traffic that's coming in overall from advertising and SEO. It's been quite an eye-opener for me.
So we didn't coordinate or discuss this ahead of time at all. So
no.
For anyone who's like, what's going on here? But I mean, it actually doesn't surprise me to hear that. And I think it's a really sharp play by you because, I mean, we totally see that happen. People, they take that domain, they forward it internally, and basically, I mean, there's like a basic attribution problem where most of these sales engagement platforms, they don't have a company object.
Yeah.
They just have leads, and leads can be members of campaigns.
Yeah.
And so just like at the most basic data model level, there's not this idea of, oh, well, I'm engaging with multiple people within a company, or there might be a conversion event that happens with a different person at the company. But where that hits reality is when that second person visits the site, hits the chat, and then that new contact is created in the CRM, and the CRM's like, wait, hold on, this company already exists. We sent them a cold email this morning, right? And so the CRM is where that reconciliation happens, between the different data models. And so to me, like that chat touch point or that immediate inbound touch point becomes really important because that's where an outbound program can go from losing money to making money. It just takes a couple of converted leads and all of a sudden, like everything that you did actually was right and it made sense and you built a good list and you had good copy. They just weren't like sitting at their inbox waiting for your email and then immediately being like, can we talk right now?
The surprise.
Yeah. They must have a life or a family or some other loser things going on besides just waiting to hear from us, which is shocking and disappointing, but apparently people are busy. And so, yeah, I mean, that like totally tracks. And frankly, I've not seen a lot of great solutions for that. I mean, even when we see this problem surface, it's just the beginning of them becoming problem aware. So to me, that's like a super smart angle for chat metrics.
And, that your comment then, and again, we haven't prepared this before, but your comment specifically around they're only just becoming problem aware, we're finding they're not necessarily converting on the first chat. They're not. We can tell when it's the same person coming back. Obviously, we ask for their name, but we certainly don't ask for any contact details or anything along those lines, which might scare them off. And those anonymous conversations, they share so much more information with than once they know that they've been identified. And so on that basis, we see people come back 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 10 times in some cases, where each time you can see that the questions they're asking are a little bit more advanced. They're asking, going from the initial feature set questions to what does onboarding look like, how they're locking contracts, etc. You can see the psychology of the person as they're doing their research. It's been really interesting. It seems to be much more obvious on those smaller websites or the companies that are only doing the outbound, because you see people that come through that journey. The only reason they get there is because there's been a cold outbound reach, and so they are often very early in that stage of awareness, as opposed to clients that have big advertising budgets and SEO actions going on, where there's people coming in that are already well down the funnel in many cases. Yeah, so it certainly has been interesting from that perspective. You mentioned,
I mean that totally the idea of the anonymous engagement being higher, giving them a chance to kind of kick the tires a little bit. I mean, for sure, it's a process. People have to go through a process to get to know you. And if you start the conversation from scratch, you got to give them time to work through it. Right?
Yeah. And look, there's 3 pieces of shocking information that I've found in the last, I'll call it 12 months, but more recently, 2 of them came in the last 6 months. Firstly, we were sitting in qualified software for one of our clients, 15,000 visitors a month. And we're generating 2 to 3 leads a month. And I said to the CMO, there's a disconnect here. We're not getting the level of engagement we should be. Can you please check your chatbot? They had the chatbot set up on the front end. Did you want to speak to support? Do you want to speak to sales? And they speak to sales. It was a case of, just give us your email address in case you get dropped off. Well, I asked them to check the drop off at that point. 96% of people that said they wanted to speak with sales were dropping off when they were asked for the email address. And so it's like, the traffic was way too early in that process to get to the point of wanting to hand over any contact details. So they switched it off. The lead count went to over 60 a month. 21 times we increased the lead generation by on that particular site. So the impact of having an email address at the front end of anything, whether it's in a form or whether it's in any sort of chatbot or any type of conversion process, has much more of a negative impact. It's not going to be that much for everybody. Their traffic was very early stages. On the sites where there's outbound is driving the inbound, I'm sure it would be a very similar level because of the lower, more problem aware than, or even, low problem aware, let alone solution aware.
They've wised up to the game. They're like, if I put my email in here, you're going to just like bombard me.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
then, it's just like, I just have a question. I don't want to get like a daily newsletter. And, it's like,
I don't want some SDR chasing me around for the next 6 months in my inbox. The other two factors were that even simple changes like changing the chat widget from a rectangle, just the old basic rectangle look that says, hey, we're here 24/7, or it's a real chat with a real person, changing that to a bubble reduced engagement by 33%. And if I went one step further and put either a chatbot, like a bot head, or a brain in there to signify AI, actually reduced engagement to just over 50%, 51% less chats. And so we were talking earlier, and we've sort of had to go through our own moment of do we actually have a business here with staffed live chat given AI and where it's coming and where it's going? That's the research we've done across 93% of our clients. And so very, very strong correlation that people want to speak to a human. Look, another piece just for everybody to have a look at quickly is exploding topics. If you're familiar with that, just Google it, you'll find them, get on their email list. They've recently done some research around the level of trust of AI chatbots, which has been fascinating. 82% people don't trust them, and yet less than 8% actually verify the source. And so the conclusion you can almost draw from that is, look, it's a necessarily evil. We don't trust it. It's there. We'll listen to what it says, but we'll take it with a grain of salt. Not that we're going to be bothered enough to go and trust it that way. I might as well just go on and done the research myself. So I think that's a bit of again, that differentiator with having a human in there versus talking to a machine. Anyway.
Totally. Yeah, sure. To me, it's like these tools are converging, these platforms and these go-to-market technologies are converging. And at some point, you've got to say that if generating new business is important, we're going to spend some like human effort on converting those leads. I know that other people don't necessarily feel that way. I guess for us, for our product, for our positioning, I think it's valuable. We get that feedback from people when they work with us. I think there's something to be said for it. And I've had some pretty negative experiences going through the whole AI thing myself, especially in support, where it's like I've been a customer for 2 years. I paid this company like many thousands of dollars, and the AI is making up something that's not real, that I know is not real, and I'm actually got a bug here that needs to be escalated to their engineering team, and instead it's telling me to do something that's not possible. It's just like, I think that, I don't know. I mean, we use it in a lot of ways. We're looking at a service tool that'll allow us to suggest AI responses, but we'll have a human review it and then execute it. And so I think it'll save us time, but still give us that personal touch and that like level of QA. But maybe I'm very naive. Everyone keeps saying this is the worst it's going to be. And, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Can only get better from here. That's what everyone's saying. I mean, I hope that's the case.
I mean, there are natural limits on like the physical world, and AI is not magic. It's actually uses energy, and there's bandwidth. There's a lot of speculative money being poured into the space with the idea that it'll all be profitable later. And maybe that doesn't happen. I mean, sometimes things don't get better forever. Sometimes you have this great experience and then it gets worse over time. So we'll have to see how it all shakes out. I mean, I'm an early adopter. I've been using ChatGPT for a long time. We're incorporating it in our business in like some really specific ways, but I don't think that like it's going to take over everything. But maybe I'll be wrong and I'll be crying in a year from now. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, we'll all know in time, whether it's sooner or later, we'll see. But I guess there'll be a point. I think that there's going to be a turning point. It'll come down to two factors. The organizations will be pushing as hard as they can for total adoption and market dominance. And obviously because they're all revenue driven, I think the two fail safes for us when it comes to the government and the regulations they put in place, and ourselves as adoption, what we will and what we won't accept, and what we'll engage with. So I think there's sort of the two biggest obstacles that AI has got to overcome at the moment, let alone all the other issues with energy and so forth.
Yeah.
At Lullsbot, you grew from 1.7 million to 20 million with a big chunk through channel and inbound. What was the flywheel that made that work?
Yeah. Well, the 3D printing industry was really growing really quickly at the time. There had been an open source project called the RepRap project that had come about, and the idea with it was to build a self-replicating rapid prototyper. In other words, a machine that could make itself. And it
Oh,
was
wow.
started at the University of Bath in the UK as like a kind of an academic experimental project. And it started to really get momentum. And then it basically created what is today the desktop 3D printing industry. And we were a player in that space. We had a specific positioning around reliability. Our machines were made in Colorado at the time. Now the company's in North Dakota, but we had a positioning around reliability and just that like the machines would just work and that they were open so you could understand how they worked and you could modify them and things like that. We had very good customer support. We had also invested in compliance around testing of the equipment, which very few companies in the space had been doing at the time. And so when enterprise buyers would come in and they would have requirements around what electronics they were allowed to purchase, it turns out that a lot of the machines that were on the market didn't pass compliance standards. We had invested in that, and we had some really great electrical engineers that were helping us meet those standards. So I think that we had like a spot, and then because of that spot, there were partners in the market that wanted to carry our machines because we met those requirements as a manufacturer. We were really successful on Amazon, which is a pretty tough marketplace, with reviews and things like that. But I think because of the quality, we were able to be pretty successful there. And the people would buy one machine and then they would see how well it worked. And, a school would then want to outfit like a whole lab. So they would come back and say, okay, we got a grant. We want to buy a pallet of machines. We want to get like 12 of these things. We're going to fill a room with them. And we've got little Chromebooks that are going to control them. And we're going to have all the kids be able to 3D print something in a class session or whatever. So there were a lot of kind of drivers of the growth there. I think that we had really great people and I think we had really high quality. And I think that was why we had the position that we had in the market, because there was a race to the bottom in terms of cost. And I think that really there were people for whom these prototyping parts were really valuable. And so they were willing to pay a premium to get the machines that were going to be up and reliable so that they could print them at a lower cost than machines that they had been buying before, which were a factor of 10x more expensive. And so basically when the desktop machines, if they were at a tenth of the price, people were willing to take a shot on them versus the more industrial enterprise machines that started at 20K and up. When we were like, hey, well, this one's 2,000, they were like, you know what? Honestly, that's so cheap. We might as well give it a go.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were a lot of factors. That was 5 years of a lot of work building that thing up. That was tough. We did CES, we scaling to 150 people. That was a whole thing.
It's easy when you say it fast, isn't it?
Yeah. Totally.
But interestingly, so, I mean, from a marketer's perspective, there was almost a little bit of a perfect storm there as well, because at the particular point in time, when I say perfect storm, strategically, you guys saw an opportunity. There was demand in the market, and not just demand to solve a problem, but something that was getting a lot of publicity at the time. A lot of people were speaking about it. So the awareness of not just the problem, but also the solution, solution was growing dramatically. And so being able to be in a position strategically where you took that extra step to get the specifications at the right level and meet the codes and requirements opened the market that you had access to. And so then, I mean, look, that sounds like a perfect storm on the front end. Obviously, you have to get everything right on the back end then to deliver. It's everything in an organization where you're selling actually a real hard product. There's the logistics, the manufacturing, the delivery, the inventory levels, availability, stock outs, et cetera, et cetera.
We did well. I'm trying to remember. We one of the partners that we had, this is kind of in your neck of the woods, but we sold through Umart. So, we had a location, we had a distribution center in Sydney, and we actually got some traction in the Australian market. We got some traction in Canada and the UK market. I think that we had a cool position. I think the timing was right. We also had venture-backed competitors who helped grow the market. And they spent a lot of money on PR and getting people excited about 3D printing and custom fabrication. And we were not venture backed. And so, we had to kind of stay in our lane and we could only do what we could do. There was just as we grew, we were able to take bigger and bigger bets. But in general, we had constraint and buying parts ahead of time and putting them together and then putting them in boxes and shipping them around the world. We were definitely capital constrained for sure, which was tough.
And so then what do you see the main differences in penetrating a market with that business, now your current business with OutboundSync? What are the main differences you see then?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, nobody's asking about Lulzbots in 7 years. So this is just like a fun thing. I mean, truly, like I haven't done an interview or conversation about this in 7 years.
Maybe it's because, you've been in like the SaaS world, the tech world for the last 7 years. I spent a long career in the steel industry in Australia. So I'm always fascinated by real products, something
Totally.
that is actually moving around, packs of steel as opposed to packs of data.
Oh yeah, I mean, for sure. I would say my heart was definitely, it was awesome. I mean, the manufacturing floor, seeing the opportunity that creates for people, where we had people who didn't even graduate high school, and then after they worked for us for some time, they were supervisors, and their pay went up accordingly, and it created great opportunity for themselves. I mean, it's a really interesting thing. If people haven't worked in a manufacturing company before, you see all the different parts of the company come together. You've got marketing means a very different thing when they're needing to talk to the engineer about physically what packaging is actually possible, right? And then you've got to talk to the assembly folks about like, well, I'm not going to put that together. That's going to take me way too long. Like we get, and so you have a different definition of constraints in that environment in a way that I thought really gave a lot of different people really exciting opportunities. And so, yeah, it was very rewarding for sure. It was very hard, but it was very rewarding work. And it really felt like we were creating opportunity in ways that felt great. Like you really felt that you went in every day and you were doing something.
You've mentioned probably the single most rewarding aspect that I found of my role, and my career grew, dramatically. I started off as an accountant, then a backward step into a sales role, and the sales manager that I used to give a hard time about not hitting his budget, all of a sudden he was my boss. And then through a career executive management, I ran businesses, ran regional businesses, ran state businesses, general manager of a $300 million business within national sales and marketing manager, $1 billion business. So you really get to see a lot of the business and understand everything from, all aspects of the process. And when you're in manufacturing environment, it starts with raw product to customer, strategic account management. So the exposure you get across the board is just phenomenal. But the most rewarding thing for me was exactly what you've mentioned, and that is seeing people that don't necessarily fit the right model for a particular role, but they come in and they just shine, and then you're able to promote them and see their own careers flourish. And, they mightn't have had the educational opportunities that others have had. And yet when you see them actually performing in the workplace, you realize that sometimes it's not always about the educational opportunities that they've had. It's a lot about what's
certainly
inside as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. It was really, really meaningful for sure. Well, also, this is a little steel fact for you. My first deal that I closed back, so I had been doing like policy work, and then I took myself like kind of a step backwards into basically an entry-level sales role in 2013. But my first deal that I closed was with Nucor Steel. It's a U.S. steel company,
Yeah,
and I remember went down there to close the deal, and we went into the office, and they have like smaller facilities. They have like kind of more specialty steel that they make. But we were in like our suits, and they were like, hey, we don't really dress like that around here. After lunch, you guys should go to the hotel and, please change into something more comfortable, and we'll wrap up our meetings for the day. And you could tell like they weren't telling us what to do, but they were definitely like, this isn't how we operate. So, but so I turned to the sales manager who I was working on that deal with, and I was like, hey man, like I don't have any other pants. Like these are the only pants I have. So we went to a feedlot store. I got a pair of jeans at this like basically, feed store. And I remember like asking the CFO, like, hey, can I like expense these? Because at the time I was literally not making money. I mean, I was skipping lunch to save money. I mean, I was like, it was tight money situation. And anyway, we ended up closing that deal. I've still got like a copy of that check, somewhere sitting around my office. But it was so cool seeing that steel facility. I mean, it got so dang hot, and that felt like terraforming. I mean, it felt like, oh, this is like humanity's ability to like bend and shape things. There was just like a raw power to it that was pretty overwhelming. I mean, I've never had any experience like that in my life besides that facility tour. I mean, I still remember kind of the whole thing. It was really something powerful. It was cool.
I've been blessed to have been in the steel industry in Australia and seen everything from raw materials right through to finished product. As much as I've been in our large port steel making facility over here is at Port Kembla, where It's literally, the old-fashioned iron ore, coke and coal, make steel, pour it out of that into make the big ingots. And that was impressive. But there is something that was even more impressive, and that is a small steel-making plant owned by Comsteel at the time in Newcastle. I had a meeting with the general manager there, and it's an electric arc furnace. And so there is a rod that is 30 centimetres in diameter. It's a carbon rod that gets lowered from above into a large pot of scrap steel, and they use an arc of electricity to melt the steel. And the general manager said, come, I want to show you something. And we were 400 metres on the other side of the plant. He said, come with me, I want to show you something. So we walked all the way through the plant, up and down the walkways, the stairs, and, with the high-vis stuff on. And we went into the room, the control room, which is virtually 20 feet away from where this rod goes down into and he said to the controller, I've got control of the person, the safety aspect of it, because you're not really supposed to open that door while it's going.
Yeah.
And he opened the door, and to feel this shaft of electricity that was 30 centimetres wide that's being driven from the electric arc down into the steel, the energy that you could feel on your chest as each, it was like a lightning bolt that was 30 centimetres around. Yeah. To this day still is the most impactful thing I've ever seen in my life when it comes to human beings being able to generate ongoing stuff to manufacture. Sure, there's bombs and explosions and that type of thing, but actually controlling that amount of energy to create something, it was phenomenal for me.
Oh,
it was phenomenal.
Yes. I mean, very different, but very parallel experience for sure. I mean, I remember, so the facility we went to was in Jewett, Texas, but I remember they had a big safety culture at Nucor. And so every time, when you went to wherever, there were these certain points where they would have pictures of everyone's families and the kids and spouses and different people who, basically it was hey, these are the people that we're working for that we want to get home to. And there's a really, really strong safety culture around that industry because, to your point, you can really,
there's no second chances with steel.
No.
If a ton of steel drops on you, you're dead.
You're done. You get on the wrong side of fix and it's game over. Yeah. So, it was really interesting. And so there's a funny thing about some of these experiences and then kind of bringing some of that intensity to kind of what we do today. But I do think that there are similarly important outcomes for the work that we're doing now, especially around new business development. And I remember when that deal closed, I was back in the office and I told the team hey, this deal is moving forward. And I remember over the cubicle, the person who was assigned, the analyst who was assigned to this ERP project, I remember her starting her work and being she's working because of me, because I closed this deal. I mean, obviously it's the brand and it's a team effort, but it was my account and I went in and I convinced them that we could help them on this project. And it's multiple levels of abstraction away from what some of these things feel a little bit more elemental, literally, but I do think the work is still important. But it's so abstracted away. Sometimes it feels so abstract that it's hard to wrap your head around, okay, what are we doing here? But as when you see, okay, the team's hiring or someone just got a promotion or they can go do this thing for their family, that's when you kind of drive home okay, yeah, these are tangible outcomes, but it's not the same thing as slapping something into a box and shipping it out and being okay, this is going to Brisbane or whatever, So yeah, anyways, an interesting season of life for sure.
And I think a lot of it comes down to what is your why? Our why in business is 1 million jobs. Through our own business, it's growing. We're all employing more people. As much as AI is there, we'll use AI to multiply, not to eradicate, but helping other businesses grow as well through what we do, as part of our mission to help generate 1 million jobs. I mean, we've got an internal, academy ourselves where we take people that haven't got an education and we're actually teaching them skills, web development, graphic artistry, etc. We pay them while we teach them. And we use them for internal projects to make that work. And then we teach them how to commercialize that themselves, whether it's freelancer or they Upwork, they want to go and apply for jobs, we show them how to do a resume. They haven't left. Nobody's left us yet. They've stayed with us, which is great. And that's the preferred outcome for us. But we still teach them the entire skill set they need to be financially independent. So,
well, that's the classic LinkedIn CFO, what if we invest in our people and they leave? And then CEO, well, what if we invest in our people? What if we don't invest and they don't, or whatever, something like that, right?
And they stay.
And they stay or whatever. I obviously haven't read this LinkedIn thing enough times to remember it. But I think that skill building and stuff, it's really tangible. And I mean, obviously it says a lot to the culture, the fact that you're retaining great folks there, right? I mean, that's not easy to do, I don't think.
It's not. And I think, First and foremost, I remember, I'm not going to say the date, I know it truly. It was in 1996, I think it was. I was in Sydney at a conference very early in my career, and I was there to see Bob Ansett speak about, the founder of Budget Rent-A-Cars, and was there to see him speak about his business philosophies. And I'll never forget the one thing that stands out the most of all the things he said, first and foremost, we're in the people business. Mm. And that has just sort of stuck with me my entire life. It just resonated at the time. And I've had a fascination ever since with behavioural science. You want to get the best out of people. How do you do that? And it's all about treating them the right way. And sometimes you have to be assertive and you've got to be blunt and say things that people don't want to hear if they need to adjust what they're doing for the best outcome of themselves and all stakeholders, whether it's the organisation, even family. But I think, we can never forget that we are a bunch of humans sitting on this big rock. And so it's always going to be first and foremost about the people. So
I think so. Definitely. I would say I agree.
You mentioned the LinkedIn quote before. What role do you think your own content, whether it's LinkedIn or podcast, plays in driving inbound demand for OutboundSync?
Oh, it's
inbound
huge.
demand for OutboundSync. It's always just the position.
It's huge for us. I mean, our business is built on relationships. We work with sales engagement platforms. We work with growth agencies. We work with their clients. We work with CRM, and developer relations and partner relations teams. And so having a personal brand around that and a name and a face matters a lot. I think it's a really big part of our success. So there's this concept of like founder market fit that I think that applies. I mean, I'm not saying I'm the only person that could build OutboundSync or at least have started it, but I do think that it's at the convergence of a lot of things that I was working on for quite a few years. And so it makes sense that I started it. And so I just have a lot of experience. I was one of the first Clay experts, one of the first Smart Lead experts. It's just one of the first people using these tools.
Watching you go through all of that process,
Yeah. So I think that the personal brand represented through content matters, and the storytelling and just the perspective and the experience and the credibility and the trust. It comes with like, hey, I've been doing this for a little bit. Like we've thought about these things and this is why we're approaching it this way. I think it's really important. For sure. And I think it makes sense through to our CS team as well, who we've got a really strong person there working with customers and they love working with them. And so, I think it's a big part of our success, definitely. I can't deny that and just say the product itself is so exceptional that it sells itself. That is not the case.
What's the smartest thing that you've done to increase inbound pipeline velocity? So it's to get inbound is one thing, but obviously, the velocity, the speed.
Well, I think that probably from an OutboundSync perspective, the most effective thing we did, and this can probably be traced back to some earlier experiences as well, but it was niching down our positioning to make it really clear who we are and what we do, and trying to use really plain language to describe what we do. There's a guy, Anthony Pieri on LinkedIn, who talks about positioning a lot. Leanna Patch is a copywriter also. She's really good, who I follow on LinkedIn, and have had a chance to hear them both speak at MicroConf. And I think that because people can sort of slot themselves into what we do because we're explaining to them in plain terms. We're a small company. We have to make a very specific product, and therefore we're not making this like grand, lofty, ambitious promise that we're going to help you run revenue, or some of these other taglines that some of these big go-to-market technology companies position themselves on because they have such broad set of jobs to be done. We say we connect. If you're using Smart Lead and Salesforce, OutboundSync gets the data between those two systems. That's what we do. We connect those two systems. We're an integration between those two tools. That's it. Now, here's what you can do with it. You can route replies. You can build reports and get attribution. You can manage block lists. There are things that you do with that connection, but fundamentally it's a data sync. We provide that as a service. And I think that increases the velocity because people understand really quickly what it is we do. And I think the better I've been at telling that story through our website, the better inbound quality we get.
Yeah. And the velocity, of course, when people can see when your messaging is clear in terms of what you do and who you do it for, then the people that need it, that fit in the who component, come inbound. Of course, velocity is going to improve. I mean, you're talking to the audience that needs what you've got, know who you are, and that fit your buyer profile as well.
Definitely.
Smart. And of course.
Pricing was part of that too. We overhauled our pricing, and that made a big difference too, of therefore, this is what we charge for. We sync data between here and there. You're sending emails. We charge you for how many emails you send. That's what our billing is. Before, it was very complicated and people just didn't get it. And so that I would say the positioning combined with pricing is a change we did in the spring that has made a really significant difference in terms of our inbound efficiency, velocity, and just inbound quality. Because, okay, I get what you do. I get what you charge. I have a couple questions kind of thing.
So just on the pricing, where did you come from? Was it a subscription-based model, or what was your pricing model that you've shifted now, obviously, to usage-based, which is
tiers.
value-based?
In the very beginning, it was $500 a month because when I started building this 2 years ago, I wouldn't take a project for fewer than $500, basically. So it's like, all right, well, let's try that. I mean, it was just totally arbitrary, really, in a lot of ways. And then we moved into tiers, and I was trying feature gating, where it was like, okay, well, if you need this specific feature in Salesforce, you need to be on our enterprise plan or whatever. And I just found that didn't really track with reality. It was basically people who send more, pay more. That number makes sense to them. It tracks with the number of inboxes they're creating, with the size of the lists that they're building, with the size of a sales engagement platform account plan that they need. And so our metric is kind of more attached on that side than it is on the CRM side, where it's per user seat, because we don't really have a user seat like situation. That's not how our product works. And I looked at other bigger data provider products and how they charge. So even like all the way up to like Snowflake and Twilio. And it's like, okay, this is kind of what we do. It's different, but it's close enough. And how do they bill? And that was kind of how it ended up making more sense to be like, okay, we're an infrastructure product. Essentially, we should charge accordingly.
It's fascinating. Our pricing, so in August, we've been running for a decade.
Wow.
Our pricing level has changed over the year. And even now, it's often customized depending on the demand and requirements of the customer. So we don't have set pricing. We've got one offer that we have set pricing on, that for the predominant outbound plays, with less than 1,000 visitors a month. But the per lead pricing and the no lock-in contract we've had for a decade, and it's been the core pricing all the way through. The price we charge per lead changes, and the price we charge for setup changes depending on the complexity involved. But we've found that, and even now I laugh, I see Manny Medina, who's moved out of outreach and started his own business now, where he's helping SaaS businesses change their billing from a subscription model to a value delivery model. And it's like this big new thing, and everyone's got to put a spin on what they do. I get it. And I couldn't help myself. I did one comment on his post, one of his first posts, that says, we've been doing this pricing for a decade, Manny, you're just catching up type thing. But it's one of those things that, again, drawing on my experience from the steel industry, very low profit product. And sure, it's vertically integrated, but the distribution end, where we were very extraordinarily low profit product, and you're competing with an Australian-made product against imports. And so the whole focus was about delivering value, and how do you make sure that what you're delivering from a service perspective, from a quality perspective, from the whole experience is, and where can you add value over and beyond? And so they've brought that into this business, that the whole focus is about delivering value. And if we're not delivering value, then, I don't want to have somebody in a lock-in contract for 12 months that doesn't want to be there. They'll tell 10 people how bad it is versus, I'd rather them just tell one extra person how good it is. And I think that charging for value model resonates. And strategically, we made the call on the basis that we want to make sure that our sales process has as little obstacles as possible.
Yeah.
And when you charge on a value process model, people get it. Like you said, they get it. I use it more, I should be paying more. I use it less, I want to pay less. And so that was very aligned with what you just said with regards to your pricing. And is the new pricing, obviously it's resonating, you're saying that's helping you. Are you finding any areas that you still want to tweak? Are you getting pushback from anywhere?
On pricing specifically?
Yeah. Whether it's the model or the level.
I think that, we have agency pricing, and then we have direct user pricing. And so our agency pricing is different because they're adding a lot more value for the clients, and their clients are also paying a lot for a lot of other things. And so the pricing is different on the agency side. We charge per client generally rather than on a sending volume basis. Mm-hmm. I'm always testing different price points, and does it make sense for us to have a plan that's lower volume and lower price, basically? I think that there's a version of the product where we'll be able to stop being so hands-on. Right now, to use our product, you have to get on a sales call with me, and you basically have to get onboarded by our CSM. Yeah. And I think that I think we're approaching the point where that won't be necessary, and that'll open up a different motion for us in terms of go-to-market and pricing. I think there will be some engineering required to get the product there from just a usability perspective. people are very sensitive about their CRM, as you know. And so we built some friction into that process on purpose just to make sure that we're not, even though it's not our fault, if people associate it as being our fault, then that's a problem. And so we built some friction in to kind of protect the customer and protect ourselves from them being mad at us, basically.
And dealing with those upfront objections and concerns.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes we'll get people will blame us on things like, I've got duplicates in my Salesforce account now, and it has nothing to do with us. Like we'll chase it down and be like, hey, it's this other SaaS app. Go talk to them. I'm not saying we never make mistakes, but like that has happened multiple times. So, we're in a particular business. It's why we got SOC 2, and it's why we invest a lot in process, because people are paying us because they care about these systems, and therefore our job is important. So yeah, there's some movement around there, but at some point we have to charge enough to be able to do those things well.
That's one of the main reasons why we only have a one-way CRM sync. We only push in. Yeah. Again, when you think about the objections and concerns, just like you mentioned, people are very sensitive about their CRM data. And we've had a couple of clients that once we've been operating with them, they said, look, it'd be really good if you can see, whether this is an existing customer or not that you're talking to. And my position is, look, we don't want to have the responsibility of having access to your CRM data. And quite frankly, let us sit another 2 months and watch what the outcome is. And over time, as we start to sit in and understand the product exceptionally, we'll end up better than their own, SDRs and early salespeople. We're able to determine very quickly whether it's an existing customer or even if it's a contact that's come back and responding to or chatting from an email somewhere. There's ways in the conversation that you ask early on. It's almost like that. How did you hear about us? Trying to get that help with the attribution, because attribution is so difficult in so many cases. So yeah, there's ways around it. That's why we have a one-way sync with CRM. So yeah, smart.
Makes sense.
You've built productized services, SaaS and channel plays. What's the common GTM motion that always works when launching something new? What's the framework or steps that you always put in place when you're launching something new?
Well, I mean, I think my go-to-market success really has been partnerships over the years. I mean, when we were back in the 3D printer company, we sold through channel partners, but we also had material vendors that we partnered with. So we were unusual because most other 3D printer companies would white label the materials. We didn't. We allowed the original manufacturer to keep their brand on the product, and we supported it in our software as such. And there were a lot of reasons why I think that was a good idea, but as a result, we had a lot of co-marketing with partners through that. And I mean, even back to the ERP firm, it was an independent firm, but as a result, we were looping in a lot of different potential vendors to help. And at the PC company, Linux company that I worked at just for a little bit before going out on my own, Linux is a super collaborative ecosystem, and I helped establish and grow a partnership with CDW, where this was in team where we were selling NVIDIA GPU systems to some pretty big companies doing machine learning at the time, which has now evolved into what we think of as AI today. So I think for me, in my experience, it's been partnerships. It's been finding people that have shared customers or potentially or shared prospects with similar pain points. I mean, that has been the lever where I have been most effective and most successful growing things over the years for whatever reason. But I think it's the circumstances. I mean, I know that that's not the case for everybody, for every company, but for me, for whatever reason, I think it has been.
And smart, and it's something that we're actually hearing a lot more of more recently. What's your process for building systems that qualify and route inbound interest automatically? I mean, are you at that stage, or have you been in that position?
We currently no. I just look at everything that comes inbound. We get a lot of weird ones, where they seem like they wouldn't be a good fit, and then they actually are. Like, got a Gmail address that comes in, but if you look the person up, actually they're essentially like a software holding company, and they have 4 companies under their umbrella that are doing outbound that could be a fit, but it came under a Gmail address. So I find that I think people try to optimize this too early, has been my experience. And it's okay to be a little inefficient, to just kind of get a little time talking to people. And if it's not a fit, and that's okay. So that's my current situation. I think that everyone's wanted to do all of this stuff with agents with inbound. And I understand if you start to get a team that's big enough, that starts to get really interesting. But, it's just hard, and the signals just aren't always out there. And I mean, the way it's been done in the past is kind of irrelevant a little bit to how it's being done today, because there's so many different possibilities. But to me, I think the thing that needs to be incorporated is there needs to be better error handling, better confidence intervals, and better inclusion of uncertainty. I think people are just they want an answer, sometimes, and it's like, well, the answer might not be good. Like I've been using ChatGPT myself for like several years. It has a lot of memory about me, and it'll just give answers that are just made up. Like I'm going to be on a podcast, and I say, "Hey, give me an episode of this podcast," and it like the episode doesn't exist. For example, which is like a real thing that very recently happened. So yeah, it's like a variable that I think that it's a little weird right now is that people say, okay, well, I'm just going to plug this into a workflow or plug this into an agent and I'll get an answer back. And yeah, but like, what if it's just giving you an answer? So, and people say, oh, that's wrong. You don't understand. It's so much better. And maybe not. Maybe I'm just not smart enough to see what's going on. But that's kind of my thoughts around some of this stuff. I think it's complicated and more complicated than people think. And I think people are too eager to like weed stuff out too early.
No, I think you're spot on. Recently had an experience, and I'll probably cut this piece out, Harris, to be honest with you, because I've said it to nearly everyone I've spoken to, but recently had an experience with G2, where our CTO came to us. I don't know if you saw my post on G2 at all about that, but did you see the post?
I didn't see the post.
So it's my CTO came to me and said, listen, this listing on G2 is representing themselves as chat metrics. Yeah, you need to talk to G2 and get it fixed. And I think I can't even remember when it was, but it might have been it was earlier in the week. I'm sure it was earlier in the week. And so I jumped on, they've got AI chat there. So explained the problem, didn't do me anything. So give me a person, there's nobody available. I said, well, give me a contact number, I can get in touch with somebody. And so it had this great big loopy conversation around and around and around. And then finally it gives me, look, here's the support number, go to this page and that's where all our contact details are. And what's it give me? Error 404 page. So that's the screenshot that I took. I thought this is going to be gold for a post. But long story short, it took them 2 days to get back to me. It literally took them 2 days to get back to me. And in the meantime, I've got my CTO. Like you talk about frustration and brand damage. I've got my CTO banging on me saying, is this fixed yet? Is this fixed yet? It's like, and I can't even raise anybody there. And so, I have a little bit of tenacity. I didn't just stop at the chat with the AI bot. I did try and find a number. I found a number to ring. There was nobody there. I left a message. I found an email address. So I sent an email through. I sent a message to the CEO on LinkedIn. I sent a message to the CMO on LinkedIn. And when it was all said and done, I still hadn't heard anything like a day later. So I did a post and tagged everybody in it to say, guys, can somebody please get in touch with me? 2 days it took. Once they were on it, they resolved it pretty quickly. And obviously I could see, they felt bad about it on their side, but it didn't change the impact and experience and how it made me feel in the first part. And the worst part of all of this is G2 were running a workshop and selling their AI chatbot but this is the new buying experience. And it's like, not good timing for that sort of publicity that I gave them, but it was quite annoying. On the flip side, you mentioned earlier about inbound and, that you've got that person in the loop. When your inbound's coming through, that they have to speak with you, they onboard with your CSO. With the new offer that we've launched, we're SaaSifying what we do. And so just like you said, at the moment you want to talk to everybody, where our normal businesses, we go through a whole qualification process and book meetings for sales team. We're just an extension of the sales team. The new offer that we've got effectively turns the website into a conversation. And so we only use 95% of the information you want to tell prospects is on your website anyway. It's just they either can't find it or they don't have the time or whatever. And so we use that information and then we just force through existing conversions, existing CTAs, whether it's a book a meeting on there with whoever wants to go through and chat. So it's almost like we're just boosting the conversion rate on the website. I've found that we've been able to, it's very early days and we've only just done a very little soft launch, but I've actually been able to get to the stage of having a couple of inbound, no-touch signups. And for me, that's groundbreaking. It's the first time in a decade we've been able to get to that stage. There's an awareness issue, like you said, in terms of awareness for what we do. It's much earlier on. And so there's a whole education piece there. So I don't think that the lead magnets and funnel is right yet. But the fact that we've had a couple come through gives me a lot of confidence that we can get that in the longer run. And at that lower value like that, it's really not worth the value of me being involved or any of the team being involved in that process before we go live. But to be able to have someone sign up, put the code in their website, and then we're live on their website in 48 hours, like that, It was difficult for us to build our processes or modify our processes. And so we've actually got a complete dedicated team that just focus on that onboarding process now. So it's interesting.
Super interesting.
Is your inbound working yet? Do you feel that you've got working inbound, regardless of the scale? Have you got a constant inbound flow?
Yeah, we do. I mean, I think that it could be a million times better.
So the question I've got is, walk us through the moment when you realized that your inbound is working. Was there a point where you've just gone, okay?
Well, I don't know what working means, but I mean, to me, like I've got meetings on my calendar most days of the week, multiple meetings on my calendar most days of the week. And so like people are finding us and discovering us and deciding to reach out. I think there's so much more we could be doing with our website to improve conversion and do a better job telling the story of what the product can do and social proof and things like that. But like at a very basic level, the demand for what we're doing is growing and we are capturing some percentage of that demand. I think that we could also dramatically improve the way that we're co-marketing with our integration partners, especially doing more with Smart Lead and Instantly and Email Bison and getting in front of their users and showing their users what's possible. But we do have, to an extent, some work that we've done there, and they've been very generous in co-marketing with us. I think we could be doing a better job finding opportunities and bringing opportunities to them. So yeah, I mean, if you have leads coming in, you're doing something right in general.
And with your partnerships, is that a case of how involved are you? How do you go about setting up a partnership?
Well, I mean, I'm personally, I do our go-to-market. So,
yeah, of course.
Well, I mean, it depends on what kind of partnership. So agencies, they tend to come inbound to us. They tend to have a client who really wants HubSpot or Salesforce integration. And so they find us that way. And usually it starts with one and then it typically grows to multiple clients because we help them move up market because their clients can see the results in the CRM and they can attribute revenue better and they can convert leads more quickly. And so they say, we want this for more of our clients. And then when they go into new prospecting calls, they tell their new prospects, hey, we're doing this in HubSpot and Salesforce right now. We can do it for you too. And then that increases their win rate with these higher upmarket companies. So there's a really virtuous cycle there. On the integration side, we rely on our agencies. I ask them, what are you using? What do you want us to integrate with? And that's why we're working on HeyReach right now, because that's what they asked for. It's like, okay, I trust that you're waking up every day. We've got dozens of agency partners now, and I believe we work with the best in the world. I mean, the types of companies they work with are major, like running campaigns for Reddit itself or running campaigns for HubSpot itself. I mean, so, literally some of the best companies in the world, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I believe they wake up every day trying to figure out how to get results for their clients. They spend time on LinkedIn. They spend time wherever they spend it trying to figure out how do I get results. So I just ask them, how can I help you? What tools are you using that we could be better supporting? And that's largely where our product roadmap comes from, is asking them, because I think they are elite operators. I believe they are ahead of the market. And I don't think that they're like a stepping stone ICP for us where one day we'll stop selling to agencies and we'll just sell to these big teams. I think that we will always work with them. I think they will always be kind of the tip of the spear for us in terms of going to market and finding people who are ready to invest in growth. So that's where we get clues about where to invest our time in terms of developing new partnerships and things like that.
And with the more infrastructure type partners like Instantly, Smart Lead, what do you work to a particular framework there where you're suggesting how that partnership works, how the exposure works? You're doing joint webinars, workshops,
everything.
Is it newsletters or?
Yeah, a little bit of everything, whatever kind of opportunities come up and however they go to market. So, Smartly does like some video content. We've been fortunate to be included in some of that. Instantly, they put a lot into their knowledge base. And so we were able to get featured there. We did a webinar with Email Bison. So yeah, it just depends on the platform and they have their own kind of marketing strategies and we try to what they're doing. We've got some event stuff that we're going to be taking the point on that we gave them an opportunity if they want to participate with us coming up in the fall. So starting to do as we have more resources, starting to try to bring more value to them to try to create opportunities for them and help them make the case for why their platform is unique. And frankly, we have a lot of customers that use multiple tools. So it's not even like a fixed pie thing where one person wins and another person must lose. We actually have customers using multiple tools for different go-to-market motions, which is kind of funny, but
Very interesting. That's a question I've got for you. So talking about tools, what does your tech stack look like now, both from an outbound and an inbound perspective?
Well, we use everything that we ship. So we're using all the tools that we support. We use them all from an outbound perspective. We're only 3 people, so we're not running HubSpot and Salesforce. It's a 3-person company. We use Clay a lot. I use Make. I'm used to Make. I know that N8N is very cool right now, but I think they're largely similar. And I like Make because I've just been familiar with it, frankly. And we've got some Make scenarios running in the background. Looking at Close actually as a CRM for us, just for managing deals, a little lighter weight. And so far, I've been really happy. I was a closed partner years ago, and so far, that's been a really, really interesting experiment for us. So I think we'll have to see if that keeps going well. And but yeah, I mean, those are kind of the big ones.
Interesting close. We were closed partners probably 7 years ago now. And so, yeah, it was interesting. I can't even remember the reason why we moved. There was some gap, but 7 years down the track, I'm sure things are very different now. And they're a good business. I hear a lot of good things about close. It's almost like, you always hear about HubSpot and Salesforce, but then there's the next level underneath, and it's sort of, Pipedrive and Close always sort of mentioned in that next level of CRMs. Active Campaign, surprisingly, it's always been just an email platform, but I'm hearing that get mentioned more as in terms of a CRM.
Yeah, Go High Level comes up.
I was going to say Go High Level. I've only heard about them probably 3 months ago, and I've heard about them 60 times since then. I think
it's a competitive market. And so from our perspective, like, we could, in theory, support additional CRMs. I mean, right now, customers are asking us to support HeyReach, so we are building HeyReach. That's what our partners are saying. Hey, this is just obviously helpful. So it's like, okay, great. But if we build pipes, those pipes can go anywhere. And I think HubSpot and Salesforce have been great. We're really proud to support those ecosystems and proud to work with in both of those organizations.
And that's really opened up the largest part of the market for you as well.
It's where the most money is.
Yeah.
And as an early stage company, we need to make sure we can pay the bills. But I think that we'll have to see. I mean, I'm very, very open to kind of what we do in the long run. Frankly, where we're also getting requests is even above the CRM. People are asking us about pushing just to the data warehouse level, so like Snowflake, because they just want to push all the data there and then go push down from Snowflake down to a CRM like a Salesforce or a HubSpot. So that, I think, is the most likely next endpoint that we would look at. But it's a little early for that. Typically, companies that are using that type of infrastructure and setup, they're usually okay with, just push it to Salesforce. That's fine. Biting off a Snowflake integration, I think, would be a lot. So we'll have to just make sure that people want it.
Look, and I think we talked earlier about AI adoption. I think the more and more that AI is adopted by organizations, it's going to be these large, data warehouses will become more to the fore, so that everything's in one place and the AI can have a picture across it. I mean, look, that's the simplistic model to start with. I think the next step is having AI that then can go and sneak into all of the different pieces of tech that you've got to bring together a holistic picture itself. It'll be one of those two, or perhaps a combination of both. AI needs to see the big picture to give you the right answers. And if your data's scattered everywhere and it can't access it, then it's like the old adage, garbage in, garbage out. So,
well, yeah, I mean, you're speaking my language. I mean, we don't do anything with AI in our product. I see our job is to get the data to the place where you're going to use AI.
Yeah.
I mean, we're three people.
Yeah.
I mean, on Salesforce, they have 3 people working on one feature that uses AI. In my opinion, that we are best served getting it to the places where it can be leveraged best. And our job is getting it there consistently, reliably, well labeled, well formatted, so that it's usable in the ways that the platform wants it. So if Salesforce wants this to be an activity written as a task to the lead, we're going to do that. And then we're going to set the task type, and we're going to set the task status, and we're going to set the task date, so that when Einstein AI comes in there and looks at it, it knows, okay, what's going on here. That, to me, is our job in this moment as it relates to people deploying AI. I'm not even going to say in the era of AI or whatever, because it seems so cheesy to me, but in this moment where people are deploying AI, that to me is our job within that. Super.
Yeah, absolutely. You're a small team at the moment, obviously plans to grow and growing nicely. A lot of marketing teams chase MQLs. That's sort of the position that they see as their end state that they're judged on. But sales really don't like MQLs. That's either, they want sales qualified leads or sales accepted leads. What's your ideal handoff system between inbounds and sales? And I guess is it something that you've already given consideration to, given the rate of growth that you're at, and potentially, you're going to have to look at expanding on your team at some point in time?
Yeah. So, I mean, the next hire that we have is going to be another engineer, because basically when we build new integrations, we sign more customers. It's pretty straight math there. I think that we're SQL heavy. We don't do a lot of marketing besides me posting on LinkedIn, and then the partner marketing and relationship development with our agencies.
Yes.
I think that the next obvious low-hanging fruit that we should be investing in from a marketing perspective is partner marketing, which would be inclusive of both engaging with our agencies, but also partner marketing on the integration side. And like when we have a new feature, letting instantly users know about it, and here's how they can use it. When we have a new Salesforce feature, letting Salesforce users know about it, and here's how they can use it. To me, it's just like a basic thing that we're not doing right now that I think if we did that better, it would help with adoption and retention, and we would get kind of a flywheel going. And because right now we really rely on people to really have the problem. We don't have the budget to go out and convince people that this is a problem. You know, we are growing. We grow every single month. We've been growing every month for 2 years. And so we're very fortunate that I think the part of the market that we're in is growing. And I think we're creating a little bit of demand too, because people weren't thinking about connecting these tools before. Like 2 years ago, they weren't asking, how do I get this talking to that? Because there weren't a lot of Salesforce shops using Smart Lead when it first came out. And so I think we are helping contribute to that momentum. But yeah, we're very heavily SQL focused. I mean, I'll get on a call with people, but if it's not a fit, I'm not sending them nurture emails for once a month we don't have a newsletter. We don't have paid ads running. We don't have retargeting ads running. There's a lot of things that we are not doing that I hope one day we will be, and that someone much smarter than me will come in and say, oh my gosh, you're so dumb. Why aren't you doing this? And I'll be like, I agree. Please do those things,
Make it happen.
Yeah. Your wish is your command. Like, do it. So, but so that's kind of our internal, but like we are very different than our customers. Our customers tend to be actually pretty big and go-to-market teams, and they're doing pretty sophisticated stuff. And our job is to be Robin to their Batman. But I do think I had a bit of a revelation recently of like, hey, like we're an SMB right now, and like that's okay, but like we need to go to market accordingly, and we need to be really efficient. And if something isn't worth our time, don't do it. And like if it takes too much effort to gather this kind of data, just don't worry about it. Like if I'm not checking it and I'm not making decisions on it anyway, then like who cares? And just focus on the things that really, really matter. And so that has been kind of liberating, I think, to just recognize our current size and let's fight for our weight. Let's not try to be a heavyweight fighter. Like if we're featherweight, be fast. And that's okay, and one day, if we do featherweight well enough, we'll move up in weight class, right? But if we can't do this, then we'll get knocked out and the game's over. So that's kind of been my like mindset lately around our own internal process.
And it's really interesting. I love the fact that you've identified very clearly who your next hire is, and the fact that it's not actually part of the go-to-market team and to grow your business is unique to some extent. You've identified that, naturally with more integrations, you do get more signups. If the next step, and I guess you touched on it in terms of some point in time with the marketer, but in terms of your next, say, go-to-market hire, how should a scaling B2B company structure its GTM team if it really wanted to double down on its inbound this year? Mm-hmm. From what you've seen across your agency, your customers,
what we're seeing is, well, it depends on the company size. But like in general, what we're finding is that if you're going to run an experiment, run it. Don't dabble. If you're going to test cold email, send a lot of cold email. And that means make sure you have the infrastructure set up, make sure you're using a good tool, make sure you're using good data, make sure the offer doesn't stink. Really give it a go for a few months. Probably that means finding a partner to run the machine for you, and that your job as a brand is to make sure that they're like getting these critical choke points right. That's the biggest like failure mode that I'm seeing in go-to-market is this like it's failure to launch. Mm-hmm. Much more often than anything else. So it's like you got to put enough gas in the rocket to even get to the atmosphere. Now you may not make it through, but if there's not enough gas in there, it doesn't matter how well it launches because you'll never have any chance of getting, breaking through. So that is like the number one failure mode I see, whether that's cold calling or LinkedIn or conferences or email or anything else. Mm-hmm. So that would be like my general 2 cents is like, if you're going to go for it, set some rules, set some parameters, don't run it forever, but you got to really do it if you're going to try to get something out of it.
Yeah. Good. I think that's good advice for anybody, mate, to be honest with you. Don't just think about it, do it.
Yeah.
The old
Nike,
I mean,
I'm listening to too much David Goggins lately, but yeah, I mean that just do it.
It's true. It's true. I've seen, with some of the signups we've had on a new offer that there's the ones that are doing the volume of outbound, they are driving inbound. The ones that are really dabbling around and not really doing much at all, it's a little bit of a test here, a little bit of a test there, we're just seeing what happens. I've given the same advice, is that where I've seen it's working is you've just got to scale the volume. You'll soon know whether the messaging's right. If you scale the volume and you're not getting any results, then you know that the messaging's not right. Maybe go back and talk to your ideal clients and get a better idea of the problem you're solving and what resonates with them and their level of awareness and so forth. Or go and hire a copywriter, a real copywriter, to actually help you get that market resonance.
Totally.
So there's a Spotlight series that we're doing, I mentioned before, about AI. So I'll move on to that at a moment. But just as a closeout question for the chat podcast, is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have?
I don't know. I mean, I think we covered a lot. Nothing like off the top of my head that's like, oh, I got to talk about that.
What's the single biggest advantage in making sure that the information is going from something like the disconnected systems? So from Smart Lead into a HubSpot, because that's the environment that we're actually operating in. You know, we have Clay, we have Smart Lead, we have HubSpot. So what's the biggest advantage of your product in actually bringing that data together into one place?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's 3 core use cases that OutboundSync solves for. I think the most valuable one in terms of immediately conversion and revenue generation is just better context to the reps. So like in HubSpot, for example, we log data, log events as timeline events. And so workflows can be triggered off of them and the rep can work from inside of HubSpot, especially if they have a phone, like a dialer connected to HubSpot. Then it's like, okay, here's the email that was sent. I've got a number. I can just hit dial and I can engage with this lead. And we see that has a really meaningful impact on conversion from campaigns. And then the like longer tail version of this is that attribution. So you can see which campaigns are driving meetings that are attended and then deals that are won. So you can see like into the funnel versus where Smart Lead will get you or any sales engagement platform will get you, which is lead status. And then like it's interested or meeting or whatever. And then it ends and the funnel ends. But you know, obviously in the CRM, because you have company objects and you've got associated deals and opportunities, you can have deeper visibility into what's going on. So those are kind of the 2 make more money arguments. And then the one knowing your customers argument is that we have a 2-way block list. So you can go from any list in HubSpot, dynamically add it to the block list in Smart Lead to make sure that if someone converts to be a customer, converts to be a partner or whatever, they don't get any cold emails from you. And a lot of teams value that because they don't want outbound like stepping on toes for the reps or just for their CS team or whatever. So those are like the 3 basic problems that people solve with our application.
Nice. Well, thank you, Harris, for joining us on the chat today. It's been an excellent conversation. Obviously, we'll include all of the relevant links for people to get in touch with you after they've heard this episode of the chat. So thanks again. Appreciate it. It's been an excellent conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for listeners listening to a couple old guys talk about the old days, talking about steel and stuff.
Rusty old steel guys, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're legit. I just did a tour one time, but I still have my memories.
Very good, very good. Thanks, Harris.
Thanks.
Welcome to the chat. Come behind the inbound scenes of some of the world's fastest growing companies. For the past 10 years as Chatmetrics, we've had an exclusive inside view of how these industry leaders are revolutionising inbound marketing and sales across diverse sectors. Each week, we bring you conversations with top minds in marketing and sales who share insider secrets and strategies for driving inbound success. Join us on The Chat, your front row seat to the future of inbound.